Good evening. It's 6:41 PM, and I'd like to call the July 27th meeting of the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education to order. Mr. Burnside, can you please take the roll call?
Board Member Nubia Duval Wilson.
Present.
Board Member Regina Eckert.
Here.
Board Member Bill Gifford. Board
Here.
Member Alyssa Malaspina. Board Member Kawi Telesford.
Here.
Board Member Arun Vadlamani.
Here.
Board Member Courtney Winkfield. Board President Caitlin Whitletter. Board Member Johanna Wright. Thank you.
Please take note that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the following manner. A written notice was sent from the Office of the Secretary of the Board at 2:30 PM on January 6, 2023. That said notice was sent via email to Maplewood and South Orange Township clerks and the editors of the News Record, Star Ledger, and the Village Green. This evening, we will hear an intentional integration survey update from our superintendent. The board requires that the district administers 2 experience surveys in January and May in order to monitor and respond to students' and families' experience. The survey data will be presented this evening. The survey data that will be presented this evening should inform adjustments to district strategy and school supports while helping to target professional development opportunities. Following that, the board will have 2 board training sessions, the first from our NJSBA rep about roles and responsibilities of board members, and the second will be from our board attorney, a presentation on Robert's Rules of Order. Afterwards, we'll have public speaks, committee reports, and the action portion of the meeting, and then the final public speaks of the night. With that, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session at 6:42 PM to discuss attorney-client matters, personnel, HIBs, litigation status report, and the Black Parents Workshop settlement. The district administration and board will be reviewing and discussing the recommendations made by Dr. Fergus as part of the settlement work. The length of the executive session is estimated to be 90 minutes, after which, or maybe less, depending on our time frame tonight, the public meeting of the board shall reconvene and proceed with business where formal action will be taken. May I have a second? Thank you, Board Member Regina Eckert. All in favor? Aye. The vote appears to be unanimous. We are now adjourning to closed session. Thank you. It's 43, okay. Can everyone get settled? Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. It is now time to approve the board meeting minutes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the prior board meeting minutes from the executive session and special meeting minutes on June 19th, 2023, and the executive session and regular meeting minutes on June 22nd, 2023, and the executive session and special meeting minutes on June 27, 2023. Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. The meeting minutes have been approved. I will now turn it over to Dr. Taylor for the superintendent update.
Thank you, Madam President. I was informed recently that we lost a retired staff member to an unexpected illness. So I wanted to just ask the board for just a moment of silence to recognize the passing of Deborah Charles, retired Marshall Elementary School teacher and longtime South Orange resident. Thank you. Hello, South Orange and Maplewood School District community. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have many timely updates for you. However, before we begin, please allow me to comment on the recent allegation of abuse at the Montrose Extended School Year, or ESY program. Please know that we sent our Montrose ESY families and staff a detailed communication with as much information as we are able to share. We also provided additional mental health support to assist as needed this summer. I've also responded to a few parents personally who contacted me directly. We truly understand this concern and certainly share the sadness expressed regarding any allegations of abuse. But as I shared previously, legal due process is mandatory in these circumstances. It would be inappropriate for us to speak publicly, specifically about this matter, as it would threaten the legal confidentiality of both the family and contracted ESS paraprofessional. The allegations that were made were immediately forwarded to the child's parent, the South Orange Police Department, and the New Jersey Division of Child Protection. The police and state authorities are conducting their investigations, and we are fully cooperating with them. As a leader, educator, and father, it can be frustrating for me sometimes not to be able to speak freely. However, until investigations are complete, I simply do not have all the facts that I need to comment on the particular circumstance at Montrose. What I can say publicly is that the contracted paraprofessional is on admin leave pending the outcome of the previously mentioned investigations. As I stated in our letter to parents that was sent last week, if allegations are substantiated, we will not hesitate to do what is needed to protect our children. To the current and future families of Montrose and all of our schools, let me say that our Board of Education categorically prohibits abuse. We again emphasize that we appreciate the concerns expressed for the safety of our students. All parents have a right to be concerned when that safety is in question. As a parent myself, and also a former kindergarten teacher, let me assure you that any instance of a child being mistreated goes against my professional and personal beliefs. There is nothing in policy, training, or procedure that would suggest that it is ever appropriate to harm children in our trusted care. This is not only a fact, but also a warning to anyone that would do harm to our children. To bolster our protections for students at Montrose, we have and will reinforce professional development, including Handle with Care, and continue to ensure the presence of multiple trained adults in each classroom. To be clear, our efforts should not be construed as passing judgment on any current situation. Due process, again, will be afforded, and the outcome of the state and local investigations will guide our actions. Rather, our efforts are geared toward reassuring our community that our schools remain safe and secure learning environments. Lastly, we will continue to work with our district leaders in our Special Services Department, Curriculum and Instruction, as well as ESS, our paraprovider, to provide professional development that includes best practices around mindfulness and cultural competency, to do all we can to help those who work with our students to make correct decisions and take appropriate actions, especially when they may be experiencing frustration. Before I proceed with our review of the results of our Intentional Integration Experience Survey, here are a few more timely updates. We have received the results of the Marshall Bolden Unpairing beta tests that our consultants, the ALVS group, ran for us regarding rising third grade placements. You may recall that we sought this review to assist in informing our methodology for future 2024, 2025, rising Marshall and Bolden third graders. We are reviewing their results and will have a separate planned community conversation on this important work. We are happy to share that families of our rising incoming pre-K students received their placements on July 18th, and all students in our 2023-24 intentional integration grades, K, 1st, 2nd, 6th, and 7th, have also received their placements. Thank you to all those behind the scenes who worked so diligently to make this happen. For those who are curious as to why placements occur over the summer, I have a few highlights for you. This time allows for our Power School data, that's our student information system, to be rolled to the next school year. This allows us to thoughtfully review class sizes, FTEs, full-time employees, and physical space to prepare to receive and place new students for the upcoming school year. Our timeline is paced to allow for our team to thoroughly complete each task. Here are a few of the tasks. Our early enrollment in January and February is exclusively for our incoming kindergarten students. Once that deadline has passed, we work with that information because it's our largest group of students that are placed each year. Those are kindergartners. We then work on placing the rising 6th graders, the 5th graders who are going to 6th grade in May, as this is the next largest group. They're also the group that will experience the largest change, as you are aware, going from multiple elementary schools to just 2 middle schools the following year. We then use June and July to process families who either missed the kindergarten early registration deadline or who are new to our district and entering an intentional integration grade level. From late spring through early summer, we also conduct our preschool lottery to identify those students who will be placed for the upcoming year. All families who are a part of our preschool lottery are notified of either their placement determination or status between early and late summer prior to the start of our school year. We, of course, continue to fill preschool vacancies, student vacancies, throughout the academic year with those students who remain on our lottery wait list until we have met our program capacity. Another important piece, for those who've been in our district a while, you know that we were very fortunate to receive a PIA expansion grant to expand our preschool services. We recognize that many families may wonder, again, why the preschool placement notification is released during the summer months. We have to understand that our expansion of the preschool program heavily depends upon partnerships with our local child care providers. Those folks who have been in our preschool system know that we have many preschool providers that we contract with to expand our preschool outside of Montrose. Please be aware that providers who express interest, and we do receive many who do, who want to contract with the district, they have to undergo a lengthy approval process that typically is finalized during the summer recess. Therefore, the district's ability to move forward with placement determinations and notification to all families from our lottery is impacted by that time frame. In other words, we have to know what our slots are going to be with our partner sites before we can, of course, use that information to run our lottery and place our students. I believe we now have Dr. Gilbert, who's going to join us as we briefly review the results of our Triple I Stakeholder Experience Survey. And Mr. Bonds, we've shared that survey presentation with you. For those who don't know, Dr. Gilbert is in Hawaii, as you can see behind him there. None of us are jealous, of course, even though he's in Hawaii. And Dr. Gilbert, thank you for taking time from your vacation to join us. And of course, you know I'll jump in and out of the presentation as well. Mr. Bonds, can you please share, or am I sharing my own screen? Dr. Gilbert's going to share.
Yeah,
Thank
I was
you, sir.
actually gonna, okay, I'm sorry. Can you all hear me? Give me a thumbs up. I can't tell if we can. Okay,
We can hear you.
very
We
good.
can hear you. Thanks.
Perfect, perfect. All right, thank you, Dr. Taylor. To Dr. Taylor, our members of our board, and all those who might be present. It is my pleasure to present to you the results of our experience survey for round 2. And so I'm going to share my screen and let's see how this goes. Okay. Very good. So, as you know, we policy 5120 states that we will send out twice a month, twice a time, 2 times during the next school year, an experience survey. We send it in January and we send it in May throughout the entire implementation process. And this survey will then be shared. The results will be shared with you all, and it will also help us inform any district strategies and things that we will do going forward. It provides us some necessary information so that we can see how our families and how our students are experiencing their locations based on their placement from the Triple I. So we'll jump right in and talk about our family surveys. Just so for your edification, we had 411 families do our second survey, which is 115 more than we had to do the survey in round 1. We attribute the growth of this survey, the responses to the survey, to several factors. First, we removed the survey from PowerSchool and put it on Google Forms. And just based on the increase in the responses, we see that perhaps the PowerSchool play of using it created some barriers for some of our families that was not present when we did it through Google Forms. Our families were provided the student identification number, so security of our surveys are very important. And so we provided each family with the student identification numbers for their students. So they had to put those into the Google survey, which allowed us to cross-check. And that was very helpful. The survey was also translated, of course, in our 2 top languages, which is Spanish and Creole. We didn't have any families submit for the Creole through the Creole survey, but we did have a few families actually submit their responses through our Spanish survey. And we think that these translations are going to be vitally important going forward, so we can try to make sure we get all of our families a voice. We launched the survey on May 30th, but we actually kept it open longer than we did the last time. So we actually kept it open a month, which allowed, I think, more opportunities for families to engage in our survey. We also had Dr. Taylor send out a reminder robocall about halfway through the administration of this particular survey. And then we also, myself and Ms. Wable, are also available during each of our board meetings between May 30th and June 30th, with computers in the hallway for families who were either coming to board meetings or wanted to come in to actually do it. So one of the things this tells us is we're going to continue as we do this survey going forward to provide opportunities for families to actually engage in the survey. And then something else that we really talked about doing probably for next year is actually going out to different events that our schools are having when we're doing the survey, to go where our families are to see if we can generate more responses. But these factors that we put in place today, I think, helped us generate the 115 extra families that were able to provide us feedback for this survey. This is just a breakdown of it in a pie chart. And as you can see, again, our families who identify as white are the largest percentage who responded at 67.2%. This orange one that you see are families that identify as Black. That is significant for this particular survey in that last time we had just under 5% of our families who identified as Black who responded. That was up to 10% this time. And so that actually helped us get a larger number of those families involved this second round. And then you see the other numbers there for you at the bottom of the screen. Our multiracial families, that dropped from, I think last time they were about 12% response rate, and their response rate actually dropped to 6% this time. And so that's definitely one of the factors I want to lift up as you look at this slide. So just again, to recap for you, just some of the things around the survey we want to kind of pull out. So 115 extra participants for a total of 411. We were up. We did see almost a double increase of the number of families who identify as Black this round. We did also have a slight decrease in our Latinx families that participated. But even though we had the drop in our multiracial family and our Latinx, the combined numbers of families of color who responded was actually up 5% for round 2. And so just a reminder, we've placed 1588 students from year 1 and year 2 of our III intentional integration. And for research purposes, we needed 307 for the survey to be research sound, and we have 411. So the data that we have, we're pretty confident that we can use from round 2 to really talk about what are some things we need to do to help improve our experiences for our families and our students.
Hey, Dr. Gilbert.
Go ahead.
Before you shift off that slide, just a reminder for those who were not here when we presented the first round, that, based on scholarly research, you can see that the number of folks that we have responding meets the research-based definition of a representative sample, which is 307 of the 1588. But of course, our goal is to have many more of our families responding.
Absolutely. So, and when we presented to round 1 on our survey, one of the questions that the board had for us was, what is the number response rate based on the placements of our students? And so this slide actually speaks to the demographics of our students who have been placed in years 1 and 2. And if we take the 5 largest groups, subgroups that's been placed through our III, we see that, of course, our students who identify white are in the 55% range who've been placed. But the number that I want to focus on is the red line that identifies our families who identify as Black as being the next highest group that we've placed in intentional integration from year 1 to year 2. That's been around 16 to 21%. And so if we want to use that as our gauge on what percentage of families, especially from our families who identify as Black, to participate in this survey, we're still not where we need to be. If you remember, that number was 10%. And so that just gives us room to grow, but it also kind of shows you why we really want to make sure that all of our families are having, being able to provide us some information and some feedback.
Hey, Dr. Gilbert, before you go off that slide, I would just want to remind the board and the public who may not be aware that part of our data committee conversation was around that, right? Being able to show, excuse me, baseline data, how many, if it was 100% response, how would that look? Not because the balance of the student demographics is not even across these placements. So to be able to compare slide 7 and slide 5 as you have, lets us know how far away we are from the, utopian ideal response. And as you shared, our response rate from families who are Black was about 10%, which is up. But the overall percentage, as you can see, it's kind of small for us to see here. Again, can you run down for us what that percentage is of Black families who've been placed?
Sure.
Please.
Sure. So, yes, sir. So between year 1 and year 2, we've placed between 16 to 21% of students who identify as Black.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm. So I don't know if you all can see this slide. So, but what this is like a 3D slide to kind of show you the response rate of our schools. You know, our elementary schools have had the highest response rate of families to the survey for both rounds 1 and round 2. But none of the response rates in our schools eclipse 30%. The school that has both in rounds 1 and 2 that had the highest family participation was Marshall Elementary School, and the school that had the lowest participation rate in both rounds was Seth Boyding. So this is something that, as we look towards the surveys for this next coming round of III, that's something we as a SLT and A&E team are really going to look at, so that we can try to engage those families more and engage all of our families, so that we can get our response rates up on this survey. And I apologize for any noise you hear in the background. Just please bear with me. So the next series of slides we're going to get into some of the actual responses that were done. These next 3 slides, I want to illuminate for you one thing we did learn. So the different in round 1, we had a response of neutral that families and students could use when they were responding to the survey. One of the things we did for round 2, we took that neutral response out. For one, to kind of see, what kind of effects that being able to say neutral would have on the response rates of individuals. And it had a significant effect. What we saw in round 2 was that without the neutral responses for our families, the number of strongly agree and agree responses went up tremendously. So that lets us know that neutral response did have a real bearing on the results that we got the first time around. And so in this particular slide, the question was, the student body at my child's school is diverse. And as you can see, 62.4% agreed, 23.7% strongly agreed. We have to around, 86% if you kind of put those numbers together. And in round 1, it was around 62%, but over 20% of the people or 27% of the people in that round had responded with neutral. And so this kind of shows you that neutral response in round 1 did have a resounding effect on how people responded to the survey the first time. On the question around my child's classroom is diverse, we saw the same thing, right? So in round 1, the total of strongly agree and agree was around 58%. This time it was 82%, and 28% marked neutral in round 1.
Hey, Dr. Gilbert, just to chime in, the team that was doing this review, and we also engaged with our school leaders to assist us, that was one of the biggest findings that we had is some of these questions just don't lend themselves to neutral. If you believe that your kids' class are diverse or you don't, right? And so forcing folks to choose positively or negatively, as you can see, really shined a brighter light on this data. Thank you.
Yep. And in this slide, it's hard for my child to be accepted at school. Again, we saw that this response rate for this particular question, because and actually on the strongly agree and agrees place, we really want to look at those, because if you strongly agree or agree that it's hard for your child to be accepted at school, then we really have to figure out what that issue is. In round one, it was 27% strongly agreed or agreed that it was hard for their child to be accepted at school. When we did this round of it, it dropped down to like 12%. So again, we also looked at the neutral number to that as well. And we saw that there was a large number of families who did mark neutral on this one as well too. And so we saw the effects of that. So we could have put all of the slides up to show you the effects of that. And so but we wanted to do a comparison of the rest of the way. And so this particular slide and the next slide kind of gives you a side-by-side comparison of the rest of the items when it came to the family survey. And I kind of highlighted some for you that we really want you to pay special attention to. So you see the one that says there were tensions between students with different backgrounds, that particular statement. In round one, 21% either strongly agreed or agreed with that particular statement. It was down to 12% in round two, right? And so if we want to look at around a high 90% rate on our positive statements, so that means for round two, getting that to under 10% is kind of like a goal we want to set. But just to show you the significance of the drop when we took out that neutral, it went from 21% to 12%. Administration cares and understands about, and staff understands, and administration understands or cares, our care and concern statements. Although the numbers did increase, which is great, they were affected by the neutrality response. As you can see, it would happen in round one versus round two. But again, really looking at above 90% of is where we want to gauge ourselves a little bit. That gives us room to growth, but you do see the significant jump in responses from round one to round two on strongly agree to those particular statements. On this page, I'll call your attention to children see themselves reflected. It was 57% in round one. Again, a high number of neutral responses. This time it was 88%. And again, it's highlighted because that is an area of an opportunity for us to really make sure we elevate our curriculum so that everyone can see themselves reflected in that curriculum. And then as a caregiver, I feel engaged in the school. It was at 54% in round one. Again, strong neutral response then, but it was at 79% this time around. Again, highlighting it as an opportunity for us as a district to really come up with creative ways to engage our families so they can feel a part of the schools that they attend. And in this slide here, school staff will ensure we feel welcome. Administration will ensure we feel welcome. Both of those, the one about the administration was at 36% with a strong neutral response. It jumped up to 72% for round two. And so again, highlighted because that's an area of growth that we really, opportunity that we're going to take on the challenge of to get those numbers up the next time around. And then the one about the families experiencing hardship, 23% of the families said they strongly agreed or agreed with that statement, down from just 26% in round one. We want to acknowledge that you have 23% of the families who responded in this survey with that, but that represents like 93 families. And again, I go back to the beginning where we really talked about we placed 1,588 students in 2 years with that. And so we definitely we're concerned with seeing over 20% of our families still saying that they've hardships. That gives us an opportunity as a district to dig deeper into that data to see what the root cause of those hardships may be. This again is a recap of some of the takeaways, which I kind of talked through. The neutral responses had an effect. Overall, our families are not experiencing intentional integration in a negative way. We want to see over 90%. So if you looked at those slides that I gave you previously, you can see we have a lot of opportunities to grow, and we're going to take on those opportunities and those challenges to get these numbers up when we kind of do the survey the next time. That 88% around that culturally responsive or being able to see themselves in the curriculum gives us a great opportunity to strengthen our curriculum so that we can see that number increase to over 90% if possible. Again, highlighting our 23% of families who are feeling hardships. We want to dig deep again, like I said earlier, and figure out what that's about. And the other major area of growth is this family engagement. We want to really work with our schools. We're going to work with our district to really be very intentional about uplifting this family engagement piece, making sure that all of our families feel like they are welcome, they belong, and are a part of the South Orange and Maplewood School District. So our students' responses in round 2. We also made some adjustments to our students for our student survey. As Dr. Taylor talked about earlier, we did meet with our administration teams after round 1. They helped us dig into the data, and some of the things that came up about the student survey was that it was not student friendly. And so I met with both principals of our middle schools. We went through the questions and we did a few things differently from central office standpoint to try to alleviate that concern. We took out the neutral responses. Instead of emailing the survey to students like we did the first time, we actually put a link. We gave teachers a link that they could give to the students the day they administered the test that sent the students directly to the test. The teachers, the principals did make time during the school day for all the students to take the survey. And then we had a couple of makeup days for maybe absences or stuff where we had the principals bring students together who may have missed the test to take it. And then we gave the teachers guidance. It's simple guidance. It was just guidance to say that, listen, if you see students struggling with a question or a word, it's okay to pause and kind of talk through that particular statement so that everyone can kind of understand what the phrase was or what we were trying to get them to say. And we even put a couple of more qualifiers on some of the questions, like we did for the diversity question. For all those who remember, for the diversity question, we put like a little definition for diversity there. And so for some of the questions for the student survey, we added other little qualifier statements so that students could better understand where we wanted to go. We were slightly down in our student surveys by like 12 students, but we also want to say, survey fatigue is real. We've done a lot of surveying of our families and our students this year. And so we're actually monitoring that. This survey was given especially toward the end of the school year when schools are closing down, getting ready for moving up ceremonies, graduations, and all of these things. And so really monitoring survey fatigue is something we really want to pay attention to so that our respondents don't level off, especially around our students. So the next series of slides are going to be bar graphs to kind of show you the differences in the responses that we got from our students on the survey. And so you can understand what those statements are. The first group of statements, statements 3 and statement 4 are the slides I want you to pay close attention to. Statement 3 was, it is hard for students like me to be accepted at this school. And statement 4, there are tensions in the school between students with different identities. If we move to this next slide, you can see that neither one of those responses were even near 50% response rate from our students. And the strongly agree I'm sorry, we don't want them at 50%. They were very high in strongly agree and disagree. We don't want them above 50%, but they were too high. We still need to pay attention to what they were. For example, in statement 4, it was over 45% rate of agree or strongly agree. And in statement 3, it was a little bit over 20%.
Hey, Dr. Gilbert,
Yes.
I'm just going to just pause 1 second because I know not that everyone can't see your graph as clearly as I can. Can you just walk
Okay.
us through the
Sure.
graph, the different parts of it, left to right, top to bottom, just so everyone can be able to
Sure.
follow, please?
Sure. Sure. Sorry about that. So I'll go back to this slide. So statement 1 was our student body is diverse. Statement 2 was my classroom is very diverse. Statement 3 is it is hard for our students like me to be accepted at this school. Statement 4, there are tensions in school between students with different backgrounds and identities. And statement 5 is I feel connected to at least one adult in the school. So we look at the response rate for statement 1, over 90% of the students during round 2 agreed or disagreed, agreed and strongly agreed or agreed with the statement of that their student body was diverse. Statement 2, over 80% of the students either strongly agreed or agreed that their classroom was very diverse. On statement 3, which was the one about it is hard for students like me to be accepted at this school, we saw that around 20, a little bit above 20% of the students strongly agreed or disagreed with, or strongly agreed or agreed with that statement. That is of concern to us. We don't want over 20% of our students feeling like that about the school that they're in. Statement 4, there are tensions in school between students with different backgrounds and identities. We had over 40% of the students who agreed or strongly agreed with that particular statement. We got to figure out why that's so high. 40% of the students feeling like there are different tensions in their school with students from different backgrounds is of concern. And then statement 5, I feel connected to at least one adult at this school. We had over near 80% of the students in round 2 strongly agree or agree with that statement. And then you can see through the bar graph by taking out the neutral response, the increase in the responses that we got from those students. Was that helpful, Dr. Taylor?
Yeah, that's great. And we'll put this presentation again on our website where we always do. And just for those who can't see it clearly, the statement number 1's on the bottom, going towards statement number 5 on the top. And the different colors represent the different rounds of surveying from the winter and the spring. Thank you, sir.
All right. And I'll just do the same thing for the next couple of slides as well. So here are the statement questions again for statement 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Statement 6, I'm sorry. Statement 6, which is I believe staff at this school cares about me. We can see that about 76% of the students in round 2 strongly agreed or agree with that statement. Statement 7, I believe administration at this school cares about me. We had just under 60% who strongly agreed or agree with that statement. Statement 8, staff at this school understands my culture and background. We had about the same amount from statement 6. We had about 75% of the students who strongly agreed or agree with that. Statement 9, administration at this school understands my culture and background. We, again, a little bit under 50%, but we had about 45% of students respond to that. And then staff at this school encourages students to learn about people from different races, ethnicities, and culture. I'm going the wrong way, I apologize. Statement 10, we had over 80% of the staff who looked at that. And so I went the wrong way on the slides. I apologize about that, but you can see statements 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, with statement 6 being at the bottom and statement 10 going at the top. And then the last group of statements, statements 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Statement 11, administration at this school encourages students to learn about people from different races, ethnicities, and cultures. You can see you had over 80% of the students in statement 11 strongly agree or agree with that statement. I see myself, my diversity reflected in my lessons. Statement 12, we had around almost 70% of our students strongly agree or agree with that. Statement 13, I'm included in lots of activities at my school. About a little bit over 80% of our students. I'm treated with as much respect as other students. A little bit over 70% strongly agreed and agreed with that. School staff reaches out to my family to ensure that they feel welcome and valued. A little bit over 60% strongly agreed or agree with that. Administration reaches out to my family. A little bit around 60% agree with that. And then 17, I feel proud to be a part of this school. A little bit over 70% agree with that. If I could, Dr. Taylor, I just want to go back to the ones that I highlighted for the board and for the community to see. These are the ones that we see opportunities to grow in. We want to dig in to see why we had a large number of students who responded that they thought it was hard for students like them to be accepted and that they felt like there were tensions in school between students of different backgrounds and identities. We're going to work to see what those look like and what we can do to change those numbers. I believe staff at the school cares about me. I believe administration at this school cares about me. Even though those numbers were well over 50 to 60%, they still leave us opportunities to grow there. We want to take that opportunity to work with those and shift, get those numbers built up as big as we can. Again, the questions around understanding culture are some other opportunities for us. And then seeing yourself reflected in the diversity is also an opportunity for us as a district to really increase our curriculum, to increase that number. And then again, the family engagement pieces where our students, even though they were, above 60% and 70% in some of the responses, still gives us an opportunity to grow and try to get those numbers up to as close to 90% and over 90% as we can. And so just to take the key takeaways again, the neutral responses did have an effect. Overall, our students were not experiencing triple I negatively. Are enhancing our care and understanding of our students, strengthening our curriculum to see so that students can see themselves reflected, and digging deeper into those responses that I highlighted earlier are some key takeaways. And I will stand for questions, and also I appreciate your patience with the noise and some of the technical difficulties that went through this, but that is the presentation on the responses. Dr. Taylor, I will turn it back over to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen, I believe, here. Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert, and thank you for taking time away from your vacation, a much-deserved vacation, to be with us this evening. And we couldn't hear any background. You sounded great to us. You look even better with that view behind you, whatever that is there. A couple of quick things before we go to board questions I want to highlight. I know we talked about the other surveys that occur, and NJ Sky, just as a reminder for everyone, in our partnership with Rutgers, is a very significant climate and culture survey, and we work with the principals on the timing of those surveys for the high school and middle school. So we're just trying to cut this data against that data, which goes to all three stakeholder groups, to see if there are trends across these sixth graders here versus the middle school overall responses. Are there any questions for Dr. Gilbert and myself?
Dr. Taylor and Dr. Gilbert, thank you so much for putting that together and taking time out of your vacation. I'm only going to speak for myself, but that actually made the presentation just so much better looking at your background. I think we're looking at a storm back here. I'm not really sure. I have one question and then just a couple of comments. Can we do a further breakdown of the data to show the responses by race and school? I know that was something that I had requested from the last survey, because I think that should help us better understand the impact of placements and each individual question and kind of like what recommendations and what future potential improvements will happen.
Just to
And-
make sure I understand,
Yes.
a breakdown per question or I'm sorry, the race in the school per question, not just the overall.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was helpful. Like, I think even the first graph was a breakdown of survey respondents by race, but then further breaking that down. So in particular, maybe it's not every single one, but,
We'll
I
work
see
on it.
myself reflected in, in the lessons and
Yeah,
whatnot.
we have the data in our Excel sheet, so we'll keep on slicing it.
Great,
Mhm.
thank you. And then I think, some of the key takeaways, Dr. Gilbert, that you highlighted in terms of digging a little deeper into hardships, I would love to see if that includes transportation, new start and end times. While I know the new start and end times obviously were separate from the III, that could have potential impact on families based on their placements, right? As I'm sure we've heard from families, those 9 a.m. meetings now become pretty
few-
challenging.
A few, yeah.
A few,
And
pretty
so
challenging.
that, just for the timing, that was not, this was before that announcement.
Right.
But what we can do, we can update the new survey to include a little more nuance as far as the narrative portion. So that way they can tell us about that.
Yeah, and however you choose to do it, it was more of just kind of for a future, as Dr. Gilbert mentioned, you're going to dig deeper into the hardships portion of it. And my last, I guess it is actually a question, is more of just, is there a timeline in place to start to actually formulate like recommendations and action plans to address the areas of growth that were highlighted in there?
Yes, so now, right, this is the time and we have, we spend the summertime, of course, planning for the fall. That includes our DAT meetings, district admin teams. That's where last year we developed our climate and culture plans with the data from the previous surveys. So similarly, we'll do that and we'll also use as an activity like we did for the previous round for the admin to dig into this data. And I think, next year it'll be even more voluminous because more kids will be in triple I, 6th and 7th grade. So 2,500 or more, families. So, and we'll have a head start on visiting with the PTAs and HSAs to get more computers in front of parents who maybe are not as aware or as able to participate, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Telesport?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I guess my quick question is, I see that there is, I guess, a substantial increase in some participation of some underrepresented groups. Do we know what strategies that we used, I guess, helped increase that? And if not, can we integrate some sort of feedback into the surveys to, I guess, ask questions of, did you do a previous survey? If you haven't, what made you do the survey this time, so that we can, I guess, find ways to continue to improve on surveys?
Yes, Dr. Gilbert touched it on just a little bit, but if I had to give just my opinion of what I think gave us the bump, it was probably using the Google form instead of PowerSchool. And thanks to great folks on our team who figured out for us to be able to still keep our security, because having secure, accurate data is just so important in this work. And that was one of the reasons why we had it in PowerSchool for our first launch, but being able to use student ID numbers and push those out as a form of protecting our security and the validity of the data was really helpful for us. I think that we gave some thought around larger steps, like for example, perhaps working with our PTAs and HSAs to have a meeting just about this, right? And have folks come out to that meeting and maybe have the meeting in a different language and have folks right there, with the computers on hand, those type of, as Dr. Gilbert mentioned multiple times, more outreach. And so that's definitely in our plans.
Board Member Bellarmine?
So now that we have data from like two different surveys, can we ensure that we put this data into a longitudinal kind of a database slash whatever spreadsheet or whatever it is, so that way we have all the data available, and then maybe after 2 years when we run reports, we can see exactly what's happening over time, as in participation is increasing, decreasing, and all the different things, right?
Yes, you actually just read my mind. I just gave approval to put this on our I microsite, the Access and Equity tab, and also where the board meeting presentations are. So they are going to be stored on our websites.
So, you know, I'm not asking to publish it. I mean, it's good to publish it too, of course. But I'm saying compile it in a way where all data is available in one snapshot.
Okay.
So like survey one, whatever, question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, survey one answers, survey two answers. So that way, when we run this report again, like, you know, whatever, 3 years from now, we have everything in one place and we can actually make some decisions saying it worked, it did not work, and so on.
Thank you for the recommendation. You know, part of our recent data committee meeting, we were talking with a third party about some data management software. And this gives me great questions to speak with them about if we end up engaging with them. And also, of course, our own internal team around how we maintain our data for future use. So thank you for that recommendation.
I have a question. So thank you. This was great. The first survey that we sent out had a comment section. Did this survey have a comment section as well? And what is the plan to, I know that's a lot of data, but what is the plan to evaluate, analyze, and then at some point share that data with us?
So perfectly stated, it becomes a granular review. And so those are some of the things that we'll be doing with our school principals who are principals of these schools. We don't want to, it doesn't serve us to keep the data from them. So we'll use them as part of this work to not just review it, but to actualize it through the work that we're doing. And we won't make that, I don't think that, I have to speak to our team, but I'm not sure we can put that narrative response on our website. It might be too personal for some folks, right? But we'll use it with our admin team for our planning and to also measure our growth, right? To see, I always talk about the III survey that we did before we launched, and that, we had 5,000 folks who read it and we got 9 questions, right? Just the number of questions also is feedback for how thorough we're moving forward with this work. Dr. Gilbert, anything else to add?
No, I concur with you. I think that this review of this data is also ongoing, and you're going to use it all to kind of map out a roadmap for how we, meet the needs that some of the information brought before us. So I don't have anything to add.
I had one more thing, more of a statement, I guess, and a question, but I'd like to see if there's a way that the takeaways from both surveys can be tied to district goals. Might as well, since we've got to track them anyway. So and some of them I said, oh, that could be C&I, when it comes to like cultural responsiveness or even the empathy with students, maybe that is tied to SEL or SEL goals, which I'm assuming we'll still have an ongoing SEL goal for the following year or for the upcoming school year. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that recommendation. Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Thank you all.
Madam Vice President, that concludes our presentation. We now have Mr. Burnside for the BA report.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Right now, we're going to do the construction update. And I'm going to start with the phase 2 at the Clinton Elementary School. This one's really starting to wrap up, if you will. The scheduled date of completion is August 1st, and the final site work is underway right now. They're making some final connections to the existing building, and they're installing the new floor in the cafeteria. At the South Mountain Elementary School, there's demo work going on for the main office walls. They're installing new convector units and the associated piping. They're continuing the site work for the curbs, sidewalks, and grading. They're continuing the fire alarm rough-in. They're continuing the electrical rough-in in the existing building. And the data and security rough-in is being installed right now. At the annex, the HVAC demolition is complete and they're installing convector units. They have set the rooftop units on the roof and they're beginning the exterior ductwork. They completed the gym ceiling, lights, and diffusers, and they're also installing the new entrance vestibule. At the Underhill Sports Complex, they're adjusting the PA system, and that should wrap that up by July 30th. At Marshall and Montrose, Marshall is really moving right along. They've got the majority of the footing and the foundation walls installed. They're beginning the underground plumbing in the next 2 weeks. And they're continuing with the asphalt shingle installation and beginning the synthetic slate shingles installation. They're continuing with the submittal review process, and they're also continuing with the asbestos abatement, which brings us to the high school. And that's all that's going on right now is the asbestos abatement, but that's expected to be complete by August 26th. And as far as the audit, it's still ongoing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burnside. I will now read the board president update. So as part of the 2022-23 Board of Ed's goals, the board will have continued education on important topics. Tonight, Charlene Peterson, our NJSBA rep, will conduct a 20-minute training on roles and responsibilities with the board. Afterwards, our board lawyer, Patrick Carrick, will conduct a 15-minute training on Robert's Rules of Order. The board will be meeting on August 1st as a special meeting to conduct the board self-evaluation and to work on collaboration with the district to develop the 2023-24 SOMSD district goals. And that concludes the board president's update. So Charlene, please come on up. Thank you.
Can you just put it in PowerPoint so that I can just go? Oh, he's in. Okay, well, I just wanted to, again, reiterate and thank the board for taking the time to have training because it really was a commitment that the board made. So earlier in the year, we started out the year doing ethics training, then it came back and helped the board with training on the superintendent's evaluation process. So kind of all of that important work that the board does. So we're kind of continuing that training tonight with talking about board roles. Talking about board roles. And, there is just more and more evidence that, boards that continue to, do more work in improving their governance work are able to make a positive impact on student achievement. So it's really important that we take the time to really focus on our work, because as you see, so much of kind of our time and our work is really about the work of the district. And so we really sometimes kind of have to take the time to talk about our work and look at our work. So we're going to talk about roles tonight. And then it was mentioned that next week, then we're going to continue that work the board is in the process of completing a board self-evaluation. So we'll look at that when we come back next week, and also the goals. So again, this is just going to be a brief overview. So really just wanted to start out as we talk about our work, really understanding kind of where our responsibility comes from or why we're here. Recognizing the importance of local control and how that, how we are able to represent the interests of our public, the interests of our community, recognizing that our authority first comes from the state, then the state legislator gives it to the State Board of Ed, and then the State Board of Ed then, gives it to us as the local representatives, and we exercise that through our policies as a policy-making body, recognizing, and, we saw the work you were doing tonight about the importance of your students and recognizing that that's the focus of our work as well as the board, making sure that that does drive our work. And, we have to say that it's more than just having good intentions or more than it's just talking about it. It really has to be the motivator of our work. And then as boards, recognizing that we are the representatives of the community. We have to make sure that the aspirations and the interests of our community, are being fulfilled in the work that we're doing. So, all of our work is really based on, starting from our responsibilities as an elected public official. There's too many times where we, sometimes think about ourselves or talk about ourselves as volunteers instead of understanding that there's really a major difference in being an elected public official and the responsibilities that come along with that. And so we are held responsible to holding the respect and the confidence of the people that elected us and making sure that in carrying out that work, that we're not violating that public trust, but then we're even held to an even higher standard of making sure that we're not even leaving a justifiable impression, perhaps among the public, that that trust is being violated. So that's the standard that we are coming into this work doing. So then as we look at our work and how our work is really different from that of management or the administration, kind of even looking at the definition of the word governance, recognizing it says to steer a ship. So recognizing if you think about your work then is kind of helping set that direction versus actually kind of sitting in the boat, right, doing the steering or the work. And really we're just kind of going to look at different ways to kind of carry out that same thought. Again, as a board, we look at the big picture. We're strategic thinkers. We're looking out into the future and making sure then that we are, moving in a direction or, have a vision for where we'd like the school district to go. So we think about our work then as looking at it through a telescope versus being, involved in the day-to-day kind of work of the district, which we would say is the work of the administration, and looking through a microscope. So, and sometimes it comes down to if we say, okay, if we could just kind of categorize our work or the difference between our work in just a couple words from the board's perspective, if we think about our work from the perspective of the what, think about the outcomes. What is it that we want to see happen? What is it that we want for our students? What is it that needs to be accomplished to help carry out the aspirations of our community? And then stay away from or recognize then it's the work of the administration would be the how. So we're going to help determine the what, and then the administration will carry out the how of what we have helped determine as the what. And we're really going to, define or delve into that next week when we talk about the goal setting. Because when we're doing the goal setting, we really are setting that direction for the year, establishing those priorities. And then again, turning over to the administration to say, okay, here you go. We talked about what it is that needs to be accomplished. And now we're going to leave it up to your expertise to determine the how. So this, again, in terms of further looking at that, I know that we talked in the past about the book, The Governance Core, and I know that some of you have it and, have used it as a resource in your work. But one of the ways that they, in that book, help us describe or think about our roles is thinking about the difference in our roles of being on the dance floor and kind of what that perspective looks like when you're on the dance floor of actually doing the dancing. You kind of have to know the steps. You have to kind of know where your partner is, know where everyone else is on the floor, versus what if you're standing up from the balcony and looking down? What a difference in perspective that is. So you're not actually on the floor doing the dance, doing the moves, but you're able, from looking down on the balcony, you're able to see trends, you're able to establish patterns, you're able to kind of get a sense of what happens when things speed up and slow down. So that's really kind of an analogy then for us to think about our work then from the balcony perspective. And so saying that when we are in the balcony, we can see that big picture. We can be focused on the future. We can understand and connect with what's important to our community. So that then is where we really have to make sure that we are staying, because if we're not doing it, we're the only ones whose job that is. So if we're not doing it, then it's not happening, right? Because this is what our job is, as opposed to the administration, then, like I said, being on the dance floor where the day-to-day work is done. So that really is a challenge. And, they say as a board that we have to discipline ourselves, and that really is the case, right? Because they say as board members, typically you're doers, you're typically used to, wanting to look at the solution as opposed to staying focused on the outcome. What are your expectations? What are you hoping is going to be accomplished instead of focusing on the solution? So again, just kind of challenge how we would do our thinking. So as you think about asking questions at the board table, as you think about when you have situations before you, how would you assess those situations? So instead of saying, well, like, what are the steps, accomplishing, thinking about how you're going to solve the situation or solve the problem, keep your thinking where it is in the board's role of saying, how is this going to impact this long-term strategic thought? What impact is this going to have on our students? How is this going to impact the organizational and fiscal health of the district? So as you're assessing situations, as you're thinking about things that come before you, don't think about, well, how can I fix this? How can I change this? Instead, stay up on the ends. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? What is that very end expectation that we want? And then administration, I'm not going to tell you how to get to that. You give me, I'm going to tell you what we need to see, what that end or what that expectation is. And then I'm going to leave it up to you. I'm not going to tell you what reports I want, what information I want. This is the outcome. Now I'm going to leave it up to you to tell me how you're going to accomplish that outcome, and I'm going to hold you accountable for that through the evaluation process. So that's really how we know when we are staying, performing our role as board members. So, as we say, okay, well then if that's the case, how do we do our work then? So our work is essentially, we know that we are a policy-making body, and this board, I know, takes its policy role very seriously. I a lot of times use your policies as examples for other boards to look at. So we know then that that is the guidance that we give to our administration so that they can run the district. We talked about the planning and the importance of setting those goals, the planning and the budget, but kind of looking at that long-term perspective. Then we know then that we have to hold the superintendent accountable through the evaluation process. And the board is also holding itself accountable by doing the board self-evaluation that we'll be reviewing. And then the importance of communication, or, hearing from our community what's important to them. So we know then that we do our work as a board team, right? That we are one body. And so we look at our effectiveness through the lens of that body, versus recognizing that as an individual, I essentially have no more rights than any other member of the public. The way I make a difference is by helping make this a stronger team. What can I provide to this team to make this team be focused on student achievement, to be doing what's in the best interest of the students? And how can we come together as a group to make the best decisions we can for our students? So recognizing that as an individual, that's not how I make a difference. How I make a difference is in my contribution to this team. So we know then that we kind of start out as a challenge, right, in looking at that, because we run as individuals. We say we don't get to pick our team, right? This is our team as we look around the board table and know that we succeed by the team succeeding, and if the board fails, we fail, right? We work together as a team, and it's a choice that we have to make. We can see the difference when we see boards that each kind of have their own priorities and are going in different directions versus saying, you know what, when we sit down and we set those goals and we say that that's our priority for the year, we're all in agreement that that's what we're going to focus our work on. That's the boat we're going to row this year. And the only way that we can really move that boat forward is if we are all working together with those established priorities and making a conscious choice to do that. So again, just kind of in summary of those roles, saying, our 4 functions were policy, planning, oversight and appraisal, and communication, respecting the difference between the what, which is our role, and then the how, which is that of the administration, the importance of us working together as a team, and the importance of communication. So just, as we say, okay, recognizing that, we do need to work together with our superintendent to make sure then that we are working together as a team. So kind of how do those roles kind of fit together then? So from the board's perspective, we have to, recognize the superintendent as our chief consultant in, when we pass our resolutions, it's usually saying upon recommendation of the superintendent, right? Because that's who is our, our chief consultant here, recognizing that the superintendent is the community's educational leader, right? Your community should be looking to your superintendent to be, leading the community in what's best educationally for them, making sure that we don't confuse our policy role with that of running the schools, and no surprises, and that should happen both ways. Right? From the board's perspective, things that we are asked to vote on should be things that have been discussed in committee or that we've been given information about, because we're responsible for casting an informed vote. If we're not in the schools, we need to depend on the superintendent to keep us informed about what's going on. If we are developing the policies, then the superintendent is the implementer of those policies. And then, making sure again that because of the chain of command, we are not talking to the staff directly, so would recognize that communication would funnel through the superintendent. So as we look then about, okay, how can we do that work effectively? Again, recognizing that it's kind of that tendency to get distracted, or like what can pull us away from our work and kind of make us consider going into the realm of administration work, is making sure that we don't get involved in that day-to-day operation of the district, recognizing that as a board, we have one employee, and just one employee is ours, and that's the superintendent, and everyone else in the district works for the superintendent. So we have to think about our focus through that, recognizing that is our one employee. If we start getting involved or thinking about something that we want to get involved in, and recognize that that's already the job of a staff member, that's a pretty good clue to us that that's not our work then. Making sure that we don't go outside of that chain of command of going through the superintendent, and then recognizing that as individual board members, we don't direct the work of the superintendent, right? That the work of the superintendent is directed by the work of the board majority. So as an individual, you have the right to bring something up to the board for board consideration. And then if a majority of your fellow board members agree with you, then that is what directs the work of the superintendent, not me asking for something as an individual board member that I want just because I think it's important. What does the team think? What does the board majority think? As a member of that team, I have the right to bring it before the team, convince the team why I might think that this is something of value to the board, but at the end of the day, recognize that the group that truly makes that decision and gives that direction is the board majority. So kind of in summary, as we're looking at our roles of making sure then from the board's perspective that we are that governing body staying, in that area of our work, representing our community and how important that is, recognizing that, the superintendent is the kind of the leader of the district, and that together we can make a difference advancing student achievement. So that really is kind of, what embodies our work. I ended it with a few kind of governance scenarios, but I think because of the way we are in time, I think like if we have time when we meet together next week, so I'll just kind of leave these as food for thought, and because some of this will come out as part of that work. And then if anyone has any questions, like I said, if we have time, we can get into it then. So I just kind of wanted to say thank you again for the board's continued interest in keeping up with this training, because part of it is making sure that as a group, I have other boards say, well, like, why is it important that we do that? And saying, well, you need to have shared learning experiences, have common language, have common thoughts about how things should work. And then, we see that, there's professional development in all other aspects of the school district here. So it's important as a board that we set an example that it's important to us too, that we continue our learning and we do the best that we can to learn our work for the benefit of our students. So just wanted to say thank you for taking this time. I know you've got more things to do, and we will be coming together again next week, right, to really roll our sleeves up and do some work about setting goals. So just wanted to thank everyone. So I don't know if there's any questions from the board or no? Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Patrick, you're up. Thank you.
I'll have it projected so I can use this.
You want the mic?
You know what? The mic's great. All right. As Keith's putting that up, I'll just say that was a fantastic presentation, and I agree with everything she said. This is actually perfect timing for this presentation because it comes on the heels of the board governance presentation. This is a subpart of a much bigger presentation that I've given in the past that talks specifically about Robert's Rules of Order. And so it's limited in scope in that it deals specifically with how you run these meetings and why you run it the way you do. Because the reality is most people have never wasted their time reading Robert's Rules of Order. It is a thick book with a lot of stereo-like instructions that is difficult to get through. So what this is going to do is focus on 20% of that book, which is going to solve 80 to 90% of the issues that come up during meetings. And so you'll recognize a lot of the stuff that I'm going to go through here. Just to start briefly, so a brief history of order. Where did the book come from? Why does it exist? So it's the most widely used manual of parliamentary procedure in the United States. It came in 1876, not surprisingly, from a U.S. Army officer. The U.S. Army is known very well for order. It adapted the rules and practice of Congress to the needs of non-legislative societies. Congress does not use Robert's Rules of Orders. It uses the House Manual, which is very much like Robert's Rules of Order. It gets changed, though, by political parties when they go to change the rules. It is now in its 12th edition, which was released on September 1st, 2020. I did check to make sure that is accurate, and it is still accurate. The changes are modest at this point in terms of how they've evolved. So anytime a new one comes out, there's not a whole lot that is changing. It's just an opportunity to sell some more books and make the lawyers check into it to see what is the new thing out of the 300 pages. So why does it exist? The purpose of the book is to enable assemblies of any size with due regard for every member's opinion to arrive at the general will on the maximum number of questions of varying complexity in a minimum amount of time and under all kinds of internal climate, ranging from total harmony to hardened or impassioned division of opinion. So I've done these highlights, and the reason I've highlighted them is because they are almost always what is so pertinent to boards of education. So number one, with due regard for every member's opinion. What this is in action is when a motion is made and it is seconded and debate starts, we go around the room. That is how due regard is given to every person's opinion. One by one, people go around the room with the opportunity to comment, to question, to say what they want to say about the pending motion. So what's the second part? Well, at the end of the day, what matters is the general will, depending on whether that's a majority vote, a majority of the full membership, 2/3, 3/4, depending on what's at issue. Most of the time it's a majority. But what ultimately matters is the general will, because that's part of order. What's ultimately going to be passed is what the majority decides. So any one member can't control it. It is the majority. On the maximum number of questions of varying complexity. So that part I haven't highlighted, but what that is, that's the efficiency part. And believe it or not, as much as board meetings might seem out of control at times, reality is that in a matter of a few hours, about 12 times a year, maybe a little bit more, you guys are running what is essentially a corporation with a $160 million budget. And so if you think about it, you absolutely get a ton done in a short amount of time at every one of these meetings, whether it runs from 6:30 to 12 or 6:30 to 1 or 6:30 to 9 or even shorter. So that's the part about in a minimum amount of time. It lets you get through things very quickly. And this is a 9-member board. Think about organizations that are much larger in nature, a la Congress, which has to have all these other additional opinions. That's why they do have a different manual that they operate under. But you could have boards of varying sizes. And so ultimately you have to figure out a way to get through all of the agenda in an efficient way, and that's what Robert's Rules of Order does. Under all kinds of internal climate. So of course, boards love this part because it describes most boards. Usually, most boards are not 9-0 boards, 7-0 boards, 5-0 boards. They have differing opinions. They have different thoughts on policy decisions and what the outcome of any policy that they're approving is going to be. And so sometimes those are very passionate opinions. Sometimes people are hardened in their positions and aren't going to compromise at all on things. And so what Robert's Rules of Order is there to do is to say, all right, everybody's going to get to say their piece on a motion to convince others to vote in some way or the other, to amend a motion or do things like that. But at the end of the day, we're going to arrive back to the general will. So what does the book address? Fundamental principles, and everyone's going to recognize this. One question at a time, one person speaking at a time, hopefully. One vote, and a vote being limited to the members that are present. The book addresses the rights of the majority of the minority, especially a strong minority that is greater than 1/3. That's mentioned because there are a number of votes in the book that require a 2/3 majority. Some require a 3/4. 3/4, for example, with this Board of Education would be the calling of an emergency meeting. Of individual members, so what are the rights of an individual member to speak, to make motions, to call for a point of order, point of privilege, when does that stuff arise? Of absentees, what does that mean? We actually have new policies that are evolving that weren't there in the 1800s when Robert's Rules was first written, because now we have people participating remotely and voting remotely, and we're starting to develop our own rules about that kind of stuff. When can they participate in executive session? In this board, they can. Most of my boards, they actually cannot. So there's all kinds of different ways they approach these. And then all of these together because they actually clash at times. Just going to touch upon the hierarchy because this occasionally comes up. So Robert's Rules is a manual, okay? It is not law. It is not an ordinance. It is not something that the state has adopted. It's essentially a manual that guides you. You have adopted that as your guidelines for parliamentary procedure, but reality is that federal law exists above all, then state law, then your local laws from your township municipality, then you look to your charter, your constitution, your articles of incorporation, then your bylaws, and then Robert's Rules. And actually, this is even better slide right here, although it's really tiny for this, that shows when custom, or standing rules actually become involved. And ultimately what this means is this: there are times that Robert's rules will actually conflict with your bylaws. And so what the question is who supersedes? It's your bylaws. This has come up with one of my other boards in terms of the nomination and voting for the president and vice president, which occurs at the reorg meeting. Robert's Rules has its own way of doing that. That board had a different way of doing that, and it actually came up during a meeting, and we had to go to the chart to show them that the bylaws are what governed. So just briefly, in terms of how it would work in a perfect world, the first member raises their hand, addresses the chair, Madam Chairperson, asking for the chairperson to now recognize them. So the chairperson then says, board member so-and-so, and now at that time, that board member has the floor, and the board member can do what is appropriate at that time. So if it's to make a motion, they can do that. If it's to make a speech at that time, comment on a motion, that's what they would do at that time. One of the things that we would highlight is that when the maker of a motion is entitled to speak first in debate. That's something that's often people just learn when they hear this presentation. All debate comments and statements are directed to the chair or president. This does come up at times because there is impassioned debate, and we have to remember at the end of the day that everybody, public speakers and board members alike, are supposed to direct all comments to the chair, because at the end of the day, what they're debating are policy outcomes and not individual or personal issues. If any person refuses to obey the order of the board directing them to restore order, or the order of the chair should take necessary measures to see that order is enforced, which should be guided by a judicious appraisal of the situation, which means that we just don't want a lot of people walking out of here in handcuffs. A motion is a formal proposal by a member to do something. So this is what the board does every month. They make a motion to approve certain agenda items. They're the basis of group decision making. And again, this is a procedure and an order that is followed per the book so that we can get things done quickly in an orderly fashion. Generally, a motion should be phrased in a way to take action and express opinion. So make a motion to approve as opposed to make a motion to not approve. The motion process is pretty simple. They ask for the chair to recognize them. The chair does recognize them. They make the motion. Another member seconds the motion. The chair states the motion, what it is to approve items A through C, A through D, whatever it may be. The members then debate, and they go through why they should approve these, why they should not approve these, or call attention to any matters that they want to call attention to. Once that's done, the chair asks for a vote. Either it's a voice vote, which is all in favor, or a roll call where each member states their position on the motion. The chair or the secretary then announces the result of the vote. And everybody's probably looking at this going, yes, this does happen at every single meeting. We didn't even know we were complying with Robert's Rules. Oh, sorry. So you have different types of motions. Main motion is the one where you're going to do something. That's the approve the item. Subsidiary motions are the type that relate to the main motion. So we make these all the time. Motion to amend is one of them. There's a few others that are out there. Privileged motions are another type of motion. Privileged motions are a motion to adjourn, a motion to recess, a point of personal privilege because someone could say, I can't hear. And that is actually a privileged motion to allow them to hear. Could be because the air conditioning is too loud. Incidental motions are related to the main motion, but they don't change the substance of it. So what could that be? That could be a question as to whether the motion is to do something illegal. It could also be a motion to ask for a verification of the vote after a voice vote because the person is not so sure that the ayes have it. And then motions that bring a matter again before the assembly, those are the motions to renew, the motions to reconsider, which I'll touch upon as well. So again, main motions used to introduce the new ideas. Madam President, I move that. Mr. Chair, I move to. That's how you phrase them. That's how you start them. The subsidiary motions, the motion to amend, the motion to postpone or postpone indefinitely. Also the motion to table is a subsidiary motion. The motion to refer to a committee, and then the motion to limit or extend debate. Privileged motions, again, you can make a motion to adjourn at any time. I don't recommend it. You do have business to take care of, but it actually does take precedence. You can also make a motion to recess at any time, and that becomes a privileged motion that you must vote on. And then the privileged motions, it's too hot in here, the fans are too loud. The chair decides those motions. Incidental motions, these are to appeal a ruling of the chair. If the chair says, oh no, we're going to do this, they can appeal that. That's an incidental motion. Division of a question is to split a motion into 2 questions. Again, it doesn't change the substance of it. It would just change it incidentally. So this comes up from time to time about when you can reconsider something, or and reconsideration is actually broken down into 2 things. Reconsider, which we'll get to later, is about bringing it up at the same meeting to change the vote. A motion to renew is really only to change the original substance of it. So this body exists for a year, from one reorg to the next. During the course of that year, it's going to take actions. And so those actions, they become binding and they become permanent unless something happens at a later time to renew something. So by way of example, something gets made tonight, but 2 months from now, circumstances have changed and they want to change that outcome in some way. You have to do a motion to renew, and it has to change or alter what would go on. And as an attorney recommending how you would do it, we would actually refer back to the original motion in the new one to explain how we're changing it and what we're changing, so that it's abundantly clear to everybody what you're actually doing. Otherwise, it can get confusing. It can also get misleading, because if you made a motion in June to do one thing and in October to do another that conflicts with it, well, now the question is, did you change what you did in June? Did you repeal it? So you would want to be 100% clear in October. We're repealing the previously adopted motion, and this is what we're doing now. The motion to amend, everyone pretty much knows this. Once a motion is pending, you make a motion to amend the substance of it. It should be germane to the original motion. So if the motion is to approve the bills list, there shouldn't be another motion out there to do something totally unrelated to the bills list. And if that were to occur, the chair would rightfully say something like it's not germane to the original motion and deny it from happening. They could also ask the entire board whether or not it is germane to the original motion and have it voted upon. And that would be an incidental motion on a motion to amend, which is amending an original motion. A lot of motions right there. The motion to reconsider, this is one that is done when during the same meeting, the board wants to change its mind. Number 2 kind of explains it best, and it's really far from me right now. It's to do a correction, permit a correction of hasty, ill-advised, or erroneous action of the board, to take into account new information or a changed situation that has developed. It has to be made by a person who voted with the prevailing side. So if they want to change the outcome, that's when they have to do it. It must be seconded. It is debatable, but not amendable. This is the cheat sheet that is used by me and many others, just to know when a motion requires a second, when it is amendable or debatable, when it takes precedence. It's sideways, so we'd have to turn this at some point in a future presentation. But basically, what's important about this is it's also in the hierarchy of motions. And so what it means is this: the motions that are listed on there, you can only generally interrupt the motion that is pending by something that's higher up on the list. Things that are lower on the list, a good parliamentarian would say you can't do that. And I would now like to move to adjourn the presentation.
Yes, so your board president's statement,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then,
do statement.
yep, and then your hearing.
Okay. The school board meeting is a business meeting in public and not a meeting with the public. Oftentimes, it may appear to members of our audience that the Board of Education takes action with very little comment, and in many cases, a unanimous vote. Before a matter is placed on the agenda at a public meeting, the administration has thoroughly reviewed the matter with the superintendent. If the superintendent is satisfied that the matter is ready to be presented to the Board of Education, it is then referred to the appropriate board committee. The members of the board committee work with the administration and the superintendent to assure that the members fully understand the matter. After the committee discusses the matter, it is then shared with the board members for consideration. Only then is it placed on the agenda for the board discussion and action at a public meeting. We will now begin our first hearing of the individuals and delegates this evening. Thank you. Thank you for coming in person and dialing in by phone this evening. The South Orange Maplewood Board of Education certainly respects that you've taken the time out of your busy day to address the board tonight. We value public involvement in our school district, and we are eager to hear what you have to say. The board does have time limits by policy, and it will be enforcing those to enable as many people to speak as possible this evening. Each individual will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please do your best to stay within the time afforded to you. The first public comment period is usually limited to 1 hour, and the second public comment period may be limited to 30 minutes. All input shared with the Board of Education is taken very seriously and will inform future deliberations and work by the Board of Education and its committees. We request that you please state your name and town of residence for the record. So let's see. Paul Adam? No. Okay. Atiana? Those people know. Okay, I'm going to look at the online. There are people online waiting. So we have Allison Beckdahl. Mr. Bonds, do you have Allison?
You hear me?
Hello, Allison.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Allison Beckdahl from Maplewood. I am a teacher in the district. Once again, I am here. I've been at a few board meetings lately. I just wanted to update you regarding my status. Though both Stephen Carberry and I wanted nothing more than to continue with our positions, it's been quite clear that that's not going to happen. As such, in one of the June board meetings, I believe it was the first of the 2 board meetings in June, the one in which the vote regarding our reassignments went to a revote, I requested that we at least be considered for positions more aligned with our experience. In my case, a middle school math position. It was my understanding that that was agreed upon. So at the advice of Mr. Durant from the personnel office, I signed up for, I paid for, and I took the middle school math practice exam, which is a requisite for the certification needed for that position, as soon as I could. I was informed immediately after taking the exam. It's one of those testing places that flashes your past score on the screen, but the official scores will not be released until August 4th, which is after this board meeting. I've been in pretty regular communication with both Dr. Taylor and Mr. Adedoyan, and I've let them know that I passed. I let them know the official scores will not reach them until August 4th. But knowing that I passed, I asked Dr. Taylor if he would hold the middle school math position for me, and he replied, I quote, "I cannot guarantee that we can hold the vacancy until August 4th, but if you decide to take the exam and complete the requirements to become highly qualified, we're comfortable sharing that you would be the preferred candidate if no other final recommendations from admin have been received." It was kind of a roundabout reply, in my opinion, but anyway, I'm not sure whether, quote, other final recommendations from admin have been received or not, but I'd like to ask the board that you look into that prior to approving resolution 4482 tonight. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, next we have Shannon Cuddle.
That community member is not online.
Not online. Okay. The final person here is Heather Kubelmass.
That community member is not online.
Okay, thank you. So then that would conclude public speaks. Dr. Taylor, did you have anything you want to share?
Thank you. I would normally reply to our public speaks, but because this is one of our employees speaking about their employment with us, I think it's inappropriate for me to respond. But as was noted, Mr. Adedoyan, our HR director, and myself are aware of her and her circumstances, and I'll just leave it there for her confidentiality as an employee of the district. That concludes my responses.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Taylor. We're now going to transition to our committee report readouts. So first will be Dr. Telesford for Special Services Committee. Thank you.
All right. So Special Services met on July 12th. I was present along with Board Member Eckert and Board Member Wright. The first thing we discussed was orientation for students entering the middle school and high school, just to ensure that students have transitions that are smooth for special education students. We also discussed follow-up of the Montrose incident, as well as the investigation and next steps. The next thing we discussed was the ESY startup, the extended school year. We're glad to hear that from last year, it's improved a lot, and many parents are actually happy with that. And then we just discussed some of the data that we're going to be looking at is still ongoing in terms of collection, and then we'll be discussing that in a future meeting. Our next meeting will be on September 13th, 2023. And that's all for this month.
Great, thank you. Board Member Gifford for policy.
Okay, the policy committee met on July 11th at 6:30 with myself and board members Malaspina and Dr. Telesford present. We have one policy up for second reading and adoption. That's 8600.1 hazardous routes, and we have 32 policies up for first read, and I think everybody can find that on the website. I don't think that's worth reading out. For new business, we discussed policy 2419 school threat assessment teams. This was a policy alert from Strauss Esme. The safety and security director has been attending trainings for this and made the district aware that a policy would be coming soon. The committee was concerned with using SROs within the policy and asked if it could be removed from the policy. We sent this inquiry to Strauss Esme for review to see if we can remove Safe Schools Resources Officer. Once feedback has been received from them, the policy will be ready for first read after that. We also received a policy guide, a video update from Strauss Esme. The committee reviewed the video to educate themselves on the current status of the law and the need for this policy. And we adjourned at 7:53 p.m. and the next meeting will be on August 14th at 6:30. And that is all.
Sorry, I forgot to ask if there were any questions after. So excited, just move right along here. But before I ask about policy, did anyone have any questions for Dr. Telesford? No? Okay, questions for Board Member Bill Gifford?
Just one update to his update, that we did receive information that it was allowable to remove the SROs from that policy, and that policy is up for first read tonight. It is 2419.
Board Member Valimani?
Was there any discussion on changing the bylaws to move the public speaks to be much earlier in the cycle of the entire session that we have?
Sorry, yeah, so that was, we did speak about that, and I believe Dr. Taylor, did you want to speak on that real quick? Thank you.
Yes, so in our committee meeting, we spoke about surveying some of our surrounding school districts in our county to ask about where their public speaks is and how, if they have more than one public speaks, et cetera. And I put those results in your last Friday packet. So there's information there for us to consider at the next committee meeting.
So my follow-up question would be is that, can we kind of resolve it one way or the other? Because, clearly, there were a bunch of people who had come in here for public speaks and they all left. So, I think we should give them an opportunity to come do that. So maybe in the next policy committee, could you actually work on the policy, because you're the only one who can work on that, but it doesn't fall into any other committee. So if you can do that, that'll be great. Thanks.
Just to share with you the push and pull with that, that we spoke about, was that I've experienced that shift in other places, and there's always a positive and negative to the work that we do. And for some folks, when you move your public speaks before your presentations, they're disappointed because they want to see the presentations and give you feedback on it. I've seen that experience as well. Just to let you know that regardless of what is decided, it's never a perfect placement because there's so much dynamic work that happens here. But we'll definitely discuss it in our committee meetings. But that was one of the reasons why we wanted to survey others to see where they have it placed, to see if there's a best practice or a preponderance of design out there in the surrounding districts.
Yes, Board Member Eckert?
Dr. Taylor, this is more of a question for you, although it's related to policy. So policy 5120, which is related to student assignment. We, as you had communicated to the public, we are considering an SES transfer wait list. I know that Dr. Telesford, thank you so much. I know you had brought up some concerns around how that would work with the variance, and has there been a response from the ELVS group on their recommendation and how we can potentially proceed?
Not yet, but I sent them a follow-up today. As I shared earlier, we've been really focused on meeting our July 30th deadline, and along with the beta tests, and just to share with the public kind of the concern that we wanted to make sure that we answer, because part of the policy speaks to not interfering or harming the purpose of the III piece in the policy. And one unintended possible consequence that Dr. Telesford pointed out was if there's a SES waiting list and that person has a space that they can go to, what happens to the numbers where they were? Are those numbers shifted now, and now are the placements out of socioeconomic status balance? And if so, what's the additional language that you can add to the policy to say, okay, as long as, are we willing to say as a board and as a district, something to the effect of what moving against the III purpose was, and being more specific. So that's what we're waiting on, and I gave them a reminder today.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then Board Member Eckert, personnel update, please.
The Personnel Committee met on Tuesday, July 18th. Board Member Malaspina, who was filling in for Board President Whitletter, and I were in attendance. Board members Wright and Wingfield and Dr. Taylor were absent. We kicked off the meeting reviewing personnel recommendations. One that I just wanted to highlight that we will be voting on this evening, the recent resignation of our transportation coordinator effective 8/31/23. At a recent previous board meeting, we have hired an interim who has already started and will be with us for a few months. The interim will open up the school year and assist in training and hiring a replacement to take on that role. We then moved on to job openings and discussing vacancies. We received updates on administrative roles. The assistant BA position, as you know, due to a retirement, the candidate pool has been a little bit light. Mr. Burnside will likely post for an interim and report in the future for new applicants to apply. Sorry, not repost. There was also a related discussion around hiring to fill special education teacher vacancies, which unfortunately remains a big issue. We had a brief discussion about exploring other creative ideas to attract more candidates. The district confirmed that they notify all staff of each vacancy via email. Schools post the vacancy announcement in an area where all staff can see them. It's all hands on deck, but it's obviously something that we're going to have to tackle over the next couple weeks heading into the school year. We talked about a couple of data requests that came in from board members. The first one was a current status of all the vacancies, open positions by type, location, number of days open. At the request of a few board members, this will now be provided on a monthly basis so we can better monitor. And along those lines, Mr. Adedoyan touched on a new process for interviewing candidates and holding administrators accountable to that new process, which includes proper screening, diverse candidates, and diverse hiring committees. We also had a brief discussion around staff that has left the district in the past, I think, 4 to 5 years. Mr. Adedoyan shared a detailed report with the requested information. We didn't do a deep dive on the call as it was a lot to go through. Thank you, Mr. Adedoyan. But I do intend to review further, especially as we go into consideration for our 23-24 district goals. For those on the committee, it's in the shared folder, and for the rest of the board, I'm happy to share the file with anyone interested in viewing as well. During new business, we covered the following topics. We had a discussion around potentially naming 1 to 2 additional anti-bullying specialists at CHS if the budget allows for it. We had about 70 cases during the 22-23 school year, which is a heavy workload for one ABS to handle. Ms. Wabel, our new, I guess not new anymore, but our Director of Access and Equity, has worked with Hibbs in previous roles and will be also helping to provide oversight and to support the ABS. We closed out the meeting having a brief discussion around district goal setting for the 23-24 school year. We talked about a focus on recruiting teachers of color, more intentional partnerships with HBCUs, and putting an equal emphasis on retention, as those two obviously go hand in hand. As important as it is to get the staff in-house, we also need to be sure that we are retaining them. And that was the end of our meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 15th at 6:30 p.m. Any questions?
So thank you for putting together the report on all the vacancies that we have in the district, and list them by type and, like an aging report that gives you time there. Now, the question I have is that public information, and is that something that can be posted on our website?
I'm going to refer to Dr. Taylor.
So we post our vacancies publicly. We have them on our website. So what you have is probably the result of processing that, so you can see more longitudinally. They probably aren't intended for the public. There are work papers, but our vacancies are on our website under the HR tab for anyone, of course, who wants to apply. And we, of course, post them right on this wall here with the yellow slips out in the hallway. So I'm not saying it's not public information. It's just been processed for you per the request of the chair so that it can be more easily followed.
Actually, that's exactly why I'm asking it to be public, because if the board finds it easy to read that, one report,
Right.
I'm sure the public will also find it very easy to read that one report.
Yeah. Well, what we can do, I don't have any strong objections to sharing it. Let's just check with our solicitor to have him review it to make sure there isn't anything within the personnel realm that should not be shared. And if he sees that, he can always redact that and we can share the resulting information. I wouldn't have a objection to that.
Okay, so I'm going to be reading our first VP, Malaspina, CNI readout, and my own FFT. So bear with me here. Hold on. Okay, so I'm reading this from Board Member Malaspina's standpoint. So the I is not me. I'm not going to change the I. Courtney and I were in attendance at the meeting, and we started out by discussing summer school enrollment, and you should all have access to the data in the shared policy folder. Blah, 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 if you don't, let me know. Since some of these programs are being funded through ESSER funds, I asked that the district start making sure we are messaging to parents that some of these programs may not be available next year. Ms. Bodnar is going to work with Paul to make sure they have a plan in place to communicate any changes. A number of our SLTs and principals will be attending a DEI conference this week, which I actually think was last week. Yeah. To develop strategies and plans to ensure we can move forward in our equity work in the district. We have 3 books up for adoption: Our Country's God, Indecent, and For Black Boys. There are no changes to any of the CNI policies up for first and second read. They're ready to go. An old business, we got an update on the phonics curriculum pilot and are expecting to learn more about what program they choose in August, along with an update on what HIB curriculum we have chosen. We also got an update on the dance program. We talked about the Maplewood shop and learned that the administration has spoken with the owner and is looking at ways to try to fit it into the district curriculum. In new business, we discussed the GPA scale and how it is determined. We did have a discussion on some of the concerns from Samaya has brought up, and we're told the administration is planning to meet with them. We had discussed a desire to make sure that we clearly articulate the GPA scale process to everyone in simple, non-educational language. We asked the administration to provide us with school grading systems that are similar to ours, since at the present moment, ours seems to be an outlier. The administration is going to look into it and provide us with more information. We discussed the CHS handbook to make sure that it is updated on the website. Currently, we have an outdated version. We want to make sure that everyone has access to the correct information. We discussed questions from board members on an ELL resolution and questions about Spanish at the middle schools, both of which you can read in the minutes. And that's it. Hold on, I'm just making sure. And that's it. Okay, so any questions on that? I mean, I don't think I can answer them since I wasn't there. Okay, thank you.
I did hold a meeting with the representatives of the Maplewood shop, and we had a delightful conversation where, we're going to be meeting with the larger SLT team just to figure out the best way for us to pilot, because there are some operational concerns, right? The who, the what, the when kind of thing, and they have a lot of experience on different ways of implementation, which was refreshing. It's not a one-fit-all type of approach. And so I'll keep the board posted and CNI posted on that.
No, I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Taylor, because I know I kind of threw that at you. And, I heard from Mike, and he's very pleased about the conversations that he's had. And, when I was running for the board, it was really important to me that we took the initiative seriously to bring, wood shop and those trades back in house. And I think this would be an exciting opportunity. So many schools have worked with Mike to do it. And he's in town. So I would love if we could do it organically here. And I know it's not as easy as that, but the fact that you're engaging him and taking it seriously, I really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's exciting. Learning more about it before I sat with him, I was just envisioning, middle schoolers with saws is always an interesting thing to think about, right? But we had a chance to talk about it, and it's happening in 180 places. So, it's nothing. It's not a new off-the-shelf type of thing, and it is local, and we love supporting local successful initiatives. So we'll keep in touch.
Okay, great. So for FFT, we met on Wednesday, July 19th at 6:30 p.m. Board Member Arun Badlamani and myself were present. Board President Caitlin and Board Member Bill Gifford were not in attendance. We discussed the middle school bids and the new scope for the middle schools. This new scope completes all work for MMS, Maplewood Middle School, and it only includes an electrical upgrade for SOMS. Future SOMS work will need financial support. All MMS items and the SOMS electrical upgrade will be part of a rebid in the third week of August. And the bids will be due September on the 21st and awarded by the next board meeting in September. Next year, we'll find money for SOMS, we hope. Change orders, we have South Mountain Annex and Big School change orders of $90,000, and that is to replace the damaged plaster that was found when old ventilators were removed. They uncovered old plaster walls that had a lot of damage, so that was a $90,000 change order that needs to happen. Auditoriums, we're getting competitive bids from Barbizon Lighting Company to get quotes on lighting and rigging for auditoriums to compare with the previous co-op bid. And Seth Boyden's auditorium construction is in process. The contractor has started the groundwork. Supplies are being delivered. And once the remainder of the equipment comes, they will get started. So that's great. There were no changes to any of the FFT policies up for first and second read. We discussed the 23-24 school year budget and discuss having it updated by December 2023 so that the board can anticipate all budget deadlines clearly for the following year. For our FEMA reimbursement, we discussed that the 2.9 million reimbursement goes to our fund balance for the following year. And again, just want to say thank you and kudos to the administration for all their hard work putting the paperwork together to get this much needed reimbursement. We discussed Oprah request fees. The administration shared that we're now getting an extremely large number of Oprah requests, more than ever before, and it's becoming expensive. So most will most likely continue to be free, but they are a criteria to calculate for some of these very high, like 3-digit fees, what that criteria would be. And we agreed for the administration to continue to investigate that. And then also we discussed having a template on the website so that people are putting in their Oprah requests correctly, because sometimes they're not, and that takes extra time. We discussed the FFT committee goals, one of which is to understand our legal bills more. So I know it's a lot of work. Thank you to the administration for starting this. And one thing that we're happy about is that this goal, for the first time, we'll be able to see our special education legal fees pulled out for the 2022-23 school year. So it just helps with our analysis. We spoke about transportation. We received an update on our bids, and we're happy to say that we came in at 112,000 for buses. And so we had originally budgeted for 130, so that excess money.
122.
Oh, sorry, 122. Thank you. 122, not 130. And so the excess money will be used for the new routes as we're bidding the hazardous routes after we pass policy tonight. And we will have 2 bus companies, First Student as well as Bel Air, that'll be supporting us next year. And we discussed lease of computer insurance plan, that we are actively looking for an option for parents to opt in for a low one-time annual fee to have the option for their child's lease computer to have, for example, unlimited repairs or replacement if it's stolen. So we discussed that, the fact that, you know, there will still be the option if those parents who do not want to opt into the insurance, they don't have to, but we hope that they do. And so that is not final yet, but they are working on it. And it is not something, at the time they said it's not something that the board would need to vote on, but they will be giving us an update shortly on what they decide. They hope to have it finalized by September. And then last, we discussed district goals and focused on the fact that long-range facility plan will continue to be an ongoing goal. So we discussed that for the next 2 years, what that looks like, and the sub-goals that are needed to continue to push it forward, specifically for the middle schools and for Columbia High School and Ritzer Field. And we had no new business, and we adjourned at 8:43 p.m., which was amazing.
It's not a question, but more of a comment.
Yeah.
In the sense that I want to bring attention, everyone's, I mean, FFT chair already mentioned this, but I want to bring attention to the fact that we do not have enough money to finish all our long-range facilities plan projects as we wanted to do that. And especially this is for the middle schools. And we already talked about this in the previous meeting, in the public meeting, that we would be short by about $12 million. And what the project managers and the architects have recommended is that we focus on using the existing money to do the common electrical stuff, which takes a long cycle to do, and then spend all the money in finishing what is happening at Maplewood Middle School. So what will happen is by the end of the time we're putting out bids and we use up all the money, all work will be done except South Orange Middle School. And we will need to go out and appropriate whatever, raise more money, raise more funds to the tune of anywhere between, 11, 12 million upwards to $15 million.
I think it was 17 million or something.
Upwards. I don't have the real number. We're guessing right now, but that's the number we're looking at. And that this is not money that we can pull out of the budget anytime soon. This is too big to be done that. So I just want everyone to focus on that. And I know we don't have answers right now. We don't even know where we're going to get that from, but that is a shortfall. So we need to, as a community, we need to discuss and figure out what our next step should be. But at least one thing good is that we won't leave both the middle schools halfway through. Well, if that's a silver lining, if you'll say, Maplewood Middle School will be complete. So the bids will go out probably this month. I'll leave that to sometime in middle of August, right? So that's where we are.
And the bid schedule, which I mentioned earlier on, but it's just too many dates, that is in the recap. So for any community members that want to be reminded of what that bid schedule is, it's in the recap on the district website. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the action portion of the meeting, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening again, board members. I present to you for your consideration resolutions 4482 through 4489. Do I have a second? Discussion.
Any comments, discussion? Anyone?
I would just make a note to our chair and the board that there was concerns or discussions around our admin, our aspiring admin academy, and there are 2 candidates on this who have come through that successfully that we're very proud of.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so if there are okay, Badlamani. Yeah, I'm saying go forward. Yes, discussion. Yeah, Regina seconded. She just didn't have her mic on.
Right. So 2 things, right? I guess we're basically approving all of them. Everything that's actionable today is in this one vote, and which is great. So there are 2 things, one here. So first is everyone should pay attention to the policy 8600.1. So with the passing of this policy, would have completed a complete overhaul of our transportation policy, which will be implemented in the upcoming year, right? And this process took almost a full year to go through the cycle. And I want to thank the business office for helping out with the analysis and navigating the complexities involved. And everyone should know that transportation is now available for all elementary age kids greater than 1.25 miles. But of course, like in previous years, the parents still need to apply for transportation. And also very important with this particular passing of 8600.1 is that we've done the hazardous routes after a very long time. And we must publicly thank our FFT chair for kind of pushing that through and doing a lot of good work in making sure that it is completed exhaustively. I mean, some would say overly generous, but that's okay. We'd rather err on the side of having a couple of extra hazardous routes and undercounting. And if there was one policy that deserved a standing ovation, I mean, this is one. So thanks. And the second one is we should pay attention to 4486. I mean, it sounds like a very mundane, everyday thing where we are adopting books, but you should note that as many school districts around the country are banning books, we are actively going and adopting books that talk about very difficult subjects. I mean, I was not aware of these books. I just looked at them, and then all 3 of them are actually talking about things that most people don't want to talk about. And I think we should leave the book adoption business with the educators and the students as opposed to interfering with that. So I really do applaud the CNI committee for helping pick these books.
I would just echo that. Congratulations to our FFT chair and our business administrator and all who were involved with, putting this final piece of the puzzle to expanding something to, just hundreds of families. And folks received the guidance on applying for those, for that transportation, and it's still on our website for those who need it in Empower School. And I also echo the book adoption work of our CNI team. These are tremendous books. I look forward. We were talking about during our meeting that we're going to have a race to read them in the CNI committee. So very happy.
Thanks. I'll also just add, thanks for all the comments thus far. And just that we appreciate a lot of these first read policies have received feedback from the community and we listened to them and we incorporated them. 2270, for example. And so I'm just excited that we're pushing these through. I know it's a lot all at once, but we're pushing it through. And I know it's also a big goal of the policy committee to be able to get ourselves at a place where we don't feel like we're quote unquote behind. So, I mean, it's a team effort. And I know we've had a lot of ups and downs, but we've got here and I'm happy to say that, that I think we're in a really good place. So that's it. Okay, so anything else? Nope. All right, so then, yeah, Mr. Burnside, can you please call the roll on voting?
4482 through 4489.
Mhm.
Board Member Eckert,
Yes.
Board Member Deval Wilson,
Yes.
Board Member Gifford,
Yes.
Board Member Telesford,
Yes.
Board Member Vadlamani.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Oh, you do have one hand carry that's coming around to you now that was discussed in exec.
So we say yes. Yeah, we're fine.
Board members, I present to you 4490. Do I have a second?
Regina seconds.
Second, all right. This can't be discussed in public, so Madam Chair, whenever you're ready for Mr. Burnside, please let us know.
Okay, yes, Mr. Burnside, please do a roll call.
Board Member Eckert,
Yes.
Board Member Vadlamani,
Yes.
Board Member Gifford,
Yes.
Board Member Deval Wilson,
Yes.
Board Member Telesford.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That concludes our actionable items, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. So we would now begin public speaks again. Do we have any?
We were informed that Board Member Cuddle was able to get on after having technical difficulties.
Okay,
So if
great.
there's no one else who signed up, we'll just double check.
All right, so nope, Mr. Burnside said no one else, so let's have Shannon Cuddle come on, please.
Hear me? Oh.
Yes, Shannon?
Hi, everyone. Hold on. I'm just trying to get to my other window here. Yeah, sorry. So, thank you, everyone. Happy summer. Hope everyone is staying cool, during the time we're in right now. But so thank you for tonight. And thank you all for, allowing space for this evening. I want to be able to first congratulate you on continuing your proactive educational credits with NJSBA and Charlene. Charlene's a great resource. Thank you, Charlene, for coming tonight. And our commitment, our multi-year commitment for dual education for the Board of Education for our certification is great because that isn't so important for all of us, as well as our individual opportunities for education as well. I just wanted to just take a moment and say, I also wanted to say, I appreciated the presentation that included the student surveys tonight as well. I also wanted to just flag, if I may, for all of us to consider as has been said before, that though the student survey that we conducted as a district is a great attempt, we are not part of the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey system. I would love one day if we were, and we're not. But that most recent survey did show, and I would really ask all of our board members to look at that recent data. It was actually even just released last week, with enhanced data around anti-bullying work. that our students actually are suffering at larger levels. And also looking at the GLSEN National Student Safe Schools data collection. The New Jersey snapshot also shows that our students are actually suffering at larger rates in the state of New Jersey, where more than 40% of students cannot find a safe and supportive staff member. And also would like to tell our board members to also please reference the recent May 2023 Trevor Project survey as well, which surveys LGBTQ plus students, mental health data, as you reference and think about the future. I also wanted to take a moment to look at some of our policies. I'm so glad we're looking at multiple policies, but a few policies I just wanted to flag. Policy 2260, which within good mention and good heart mentions all gender, but also mentions whenever possible for including a non-gender specific restroom, all gender restroom. That is not our practice, so please go back to our 5756 trans student policy. And also within the state guidelines for best practices for transgender non-binary students. Our commitment is to always have an all-gender restroom, all-gender facility for all students and families. So please, when you were looking at these policies, please cross-reference, and please also be mindful of language, because it doesn't look like the current policy, even however well-intended, in 2260, that our current transgender non-student policy and the current state guidelines of 5756 policy were referenced. I also just want to also pause to say with the curriculum policy with 2200 tonight mentions family life education. I have to say I have to pause about that because family life education is a conservative talking
Hey,
point.
Shannon, thank you so much. Your time is up. Do you want to is there any last?
Yes, just the family life education is concerning because it's actually an anti-sex education and anti-LGBT talking point, and would like us to revisit that talking point as added language because that's not within our previous policy. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for going over.
Thank you. Let me just see. Is it? Dr. Taylor, anything you wanted to respond with?
I was having a little bit of a hard time hearing Shannon Cuddle's comments. I would only ask that they possibly email them so I could follow along a little closer, especially around the possible survey data that's out there that can help us with our work. So I'll reach out.
Okay, great, thank you. We are now moving to the new business portion of the meeting. Just a reminder that new business is a time when board members can bring forth topics that are of such urgency that they must be dealt with in that meeting and not at the next meeting, which would afford board members ample time for review. New business topics brought by the board will be done with board action in mind, and motions should be brought forward by the board member requesting a topic for new business. With that being said, does anyone have any new business tonight? No? Okay, great. So I'm now going to close new business. Thank you. And now I'd like to make the following motion. Sit back down. Bill's ready to go. The Board of Education will hold a public board retreat on Tuesday, August 1st, 2023 at 6 p.m. at 525 Academy Street, Maplewood, New Jersey, and immediately adjourn to go into a board retreat in person and utilizing an online video conference platform to discuss the board self-evaluation and district goals. Action will not be taken. The Board of Education will meet in public session on Thursday, August 24th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in the district meeting room. Immediately following the opening of public session, the board will go into closed session in the superintendent's office, as well as using an online video conference platform to discuss personnel matters within the attorney-client privilege, legal negotiations, and other matters that arise and require a discussion to be announced at a later date. Immediately following the closed session, the Board of Education will meet in public session, estimated to be 7:30 p.m. in the district room. 525 Academy Street, Maplewood, New Jersey, in person, utilizing an online video conference platform which will include hearing of individuals. The community can view the meeting by following the steps which will be listed on the agenda. If there are members of the community who would like to attend the meeting in person, please note that masks and social distancing are optional in accordance with the guidance received from the local DOH and the CDC. Action will be taken. May I have a second? All in favor? That appears to be unanimous. I'd like to adjourn. Mr. Burnside, I would now like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting on Thursday, July 27 at 10:13 PM. May I have a second? Yes. Gina says yes. All in favor? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great time tonight, whatever you decide to do.